The Long Island Pine Barrens, a sanctuary to all kinds of wild and plant life. Look at that majestic owl, a sprightly lizard roaming among the leaves, a calm, peaceful lake view rich with life. Escape from everyday life. Visit the Long Island Pine Barrens now. That's normally how these sort of touristy nature attraction advertisements go. Not that it's such a bad thing to admire nature, but ads like these do make the Pine Barrens unrealistically perfect. They teach people to admire aesthetics rather than look into the actual ecological or social reality of them, which are more complicated than they seem. Hi, I'm Lillian.
And I'm Jason.
And we're here to talk to you about what's been going on in the Pine Barrens. So just for reference, Jason and I are in a residential park, Wanta Park in Long Island, and people come out here to enjoy the trees and the nature, but you know, as it tends to go, there's a ton of trash on the ground, a lot of bottle caps around here. And the trees around here are linden trees. Look at the poor linden tree. It's got streamers all over it, probably from some party that people had the night before. But that's how it tends to go with recreation and nature in America.
So pine barrens are usually found on the east coast of the United States. They're usually characterized by acidic soil that's usually very sandy, kind of like this. Sand is usually pretty bad at holding in anything, like water, nutrients, and even toxins. This is especially important on Long Island because beneath our pine barrens, we have an aquifer full of our drinking water. If we develop that land, all the associated chemicals would surely seep through and contaminate our drinking supply. Bad news.
Unfortunately, people don't tend to care all that much about the Long Island Pine Barrens, but once they start to realize that problems regarding the Pine Barrens direct them effectively, things start to change. Take the Long Island Pine Barrens Preservation Act, for instance. If it weren't for the aquifers under the Barrens providing over 90% of drinking water in Suffolk County, then you wouldn't have Democrats and Republicans coming together to form an environmental act. But thanks to the fact that people tend to care about their children, over 100,000 acres of land have been preserved in the Barrens.
So thanks, terrible sandy soil, for giving us a good reason to protect a big chunk of land. In fact, the soil is so unusual that only a small number of different plants can grow there, like the pitch pine, from which the pine barrens get their name. Like other tall trees, it comes in pretty late in ecological succession, which is nature's rebound system for recovering from destructive events like wildfire. The pine barrens are a fire-adapted ecosystem, meaning that it's actually important for their survival that they burn every couple years. This is a big reason why pine barrens are so rare in the world. People don't like smoke filling up the air or fire burning down their homes, so when they suppress them, the barrens suffer.
The Long Island Pine Barrens has a history of huge wildfires occurring every decade or so. The largest one known to date was in 1995, and it burned up thousands of acres in the Hamptons. Nobody was harmed, but the property damage and lack of tourism hit the economy of the area really badly. Afterwards, measures were taken to try and prevent and put out future fires, but it didn't work out very well because in 2012 another huge fire broke out in the Barrens. Each time there was another fire, there were more talks of starting a prescribed fire system finally, where parts of the preserves are ignited in a controlled manner, but it never came into fruition.
That is until as recently as 2020. The New York DEC is currently trying out small fires in a part of the Pine Barrens with the hope of making it a regular practice in the region. Not only will this reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire, but it will also revitalize the Pine Barrens by restoring its natural cycle of succession as well as controlling the population of the destructive pine bark beetle. To see how a successful fire system works, look no further than the Albany pine bush. Every year they scorch different sections of their pine barrens to allow for natural ecological succession to start over. If you're worried about the animals that live there, don't. They make sure that every time they burn a section of land that there's another section right next to it that hasn't been burned for a number of years, allowing the animals to seek safety there until their homes grow back.
Here's a useful term: disturbances. Essentially, disturbances are environmental events that majorly disrupt an ecosystem, including the forest fires that the parents depend on. Starting from scratch, ecosystems go through ecological succession from fast-growing shrubs and grasses to tall oaks and pines, but another kind of common disturbance is human development, whether it's malls or roads being built over plant life. You might think, humans really do permanently ruin everything in nature by building concrete jungles, but surprisingly, nature continues on, in a really cool way too. Ecological succession happens anywhere that there isn't constant disturbance and where there are enough resources, like leftover seeds or soil. So there's some very cool looking places that are reminiscent of fictional post-apocalyptic scenes with buildings overtaken by plants. These sort of places, like Chernobyl, have been abandoned by people and had ecological succession begin anew from under the sidewalks and into buildings.
While it seems like everyone who lives here respects the existence of the Long Island Pine Barrens, that doesn't mean it's safe from harm. Even if it serves the interests of the island, that doesn't mean much to the entrepreneurs who want to sell us things from the safety of somewhere far away. These companies have no business developing land in our Pine Barrens, but they're trying nonetheless. Take, for example, a project originally called Hills at Southampton. It's a plan to build a resort in the Pine Barrens spanning 600 acres. And there are so many reasons why this would be a burden to us living here. First and foremost, it's a threat to the aquifer, something no one here wants to deal with. It would also diminish our Pine Barrens, making Suffolk County a little bit closer to being more of a concrete wasteland like its neighbor, Nassau. This means less habitat for local wildlife, fewer trees to absorb carbon, and more pollution in the air, water, and earth.
Although towns like Southampton are home to wealthier people that would probably benefit from the building of a resort, other places aren't as lucky. Land development isn't the only thing that kicks people from their home. A more controversial thing that does the same is the creation of the Pine Barrens preserves and national parks. Parks like Yellowstone have been infamously known to have unfairly removed natives from its lands to secure a sort of virgin wilderness safe for tourism. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to see middle to low class minorities having to live in places away from nature due to the expenses of living near a nature destination. And that's how it is in the Hamptons, with a white population of almost 90% and a very large lack of minorities in the area. It's a similar system where wealthier members of the majority get to live near and experience nature compared to less privileged people.
A new threat referenced previously that has been starting to cause problems for the Pine Barrens is the encroachment of an insect called the southern pine beetle. This bug is infamous for infesting pine tree communities around the country, killing them by the millions. Their numbers aren't quite as big enough to destroy the entire Pine Barrens, but it's a major cause for concern. By the way, does the word southern in its name surprise you? What's something with a name like that doing on Long Island? Well, in fact, it is from the south, and wasn't usually found up here until recent years. What changed? In short, global warming. The southern pine beetle depends on warm temperatures in order to survive, grow, and reproduce quickly. With temperatures on the rise in many parts of the world, including on Long Island, the beetles have been able to expand northward and cause havoc here as well. It just goes to show the different and unexpected ways climate change can mess everything up. For now, prescribed fires are hoped to keep the beetles in check, but it may get harder as the world continues to change.
So, to summarize, the Long Island Pine Barrens aren't perfect. From its dubious demographics to its constant existential threats, the management of the Pine Barrens has no shortage of controversies. Does this mean it's not worth the effort? Far from it. It might be a struggle, but there's no reason to give in. Many would argue that the various reasons we love the Pine Barrens, like what we've discussed so far, are worth it alone. But of course, most important is our aquifer. So not only is the fight about the things we cherish, but it's about our survival on this island. We're lucky to have such an extensive source of water here, so unless we want to go through what the West Coast is experiencing these days, we ought to show the Pine Barrens some love.
Uh-oh, who is this guy?